On Kamino, the cloners always claimed to serve the Jedi. They built the Grand Army, trained it, perfected it. But buried inside every clone was a secret, an inhibitor chip designed to turn them against their generals. In the timeline we know, that secret stayed hidden until it was too late. The order was given, the Jedi fell, and the Republic became the Empire. But what if the Kaminoans didn't stay silent? What if they revealed Order 66 to the Jedi Council before Palpatine could use it? In this version of the story, that's exactly what happens, and nothing turns out the same. Let's begin. Prime Minister Lama Su convened a secret council, the kind that even the Sith weren't supposed to know about. Around the table sat Kamino's finest scientists and leaders, including Nala Se, the architect behind the clones. Medical programming. The debate wasn't about loyalty. It was about survival. The Sith had paid them well. Count Dooku, under the name Tyrannus, had delivered credits and contracts beyond measure. But the Kaminoans were not fools. They knew that when the war ended, the Sith would not need them anymore. The Jedi cared for their clones, even considered them brothers in arms. But the Sith would strip Kamino bare and discard its people the moment their use was over. So Lama Su laid out a daring plan. They would betray the Sith first. Nala Se created something subtle, elegant, and invisible. She called it the Whisper Protocol. A high-frequency resonance hidden in Kamino's infrastructure, woven into the hum of ventilators, the tones of the medbays, even the faint static of training room speakers. Clones returning home for routine checkups would hear it without realizing. A gentle tone above human hearing, but perfectly tuned to the engineered senses of a clone brain. Minutes of exposure became hours, hours became days, and thread by thread, the control pathways of the inhibitor chips began to unravel. No alarms, no trauma, just a slow corrosion until the chips failed completely. For clones stationed away from Kamino, the Kaminoans slipped the signal into wellness messages. A simple recording that asked troopers to check their sleep or report odd dreams, carrying with it the same frequency that loosened the chip's grip. By the final months of the war, most of the Grand Army's chips were nothing but dead circuits, and no one noticed. But the Kaminoans weren't content with simply disabling the weapon. They wanted to ensure the Jedi knew exactly what had been intended for them. Shaak Ti, the Jedi who had long overseen clone training on Kamino, was handed an encrypted packet. Inside were diagrams of the chips, research logs, and most chilling of all, a line buried deep in the code. Contingency Order 66. Authorization came directly from the Supreme Chancellor. Trigger, Jedi treason. Action, execute every Jedi, everywhere. Shaak Ti brought the packet to Coruscant. She stood before the Jedi Council and activated the display. Blue light filled the chamber, illuminating the faces of masters who had fought this war for years without ever suspecting how close they stood to their own destruction. Mace Windu broke the silence first. No one else could benefit from this. The Chancellor wrote this contingency for himself. Obi-Wan spoke more carefully. And if we accuse him without proof, he will paint us as traitors. The Senate trusts him more than us already. Plo Koon studied the projection. Evidence can be destroyed, but a chip cannot be argued with. If we remove one, if we show it to the Senate, his plan ends before it begins. And then Anakin Skywalker spoke, his voice tight with frustration. Fives died trying to tell us. The Chancellor called him unstable, but he was right. If you send me, I'll get proof. We can't wait for Palpatine to make his move. The Council agreed. A small team would return to Kamino to gather physical evidence. Plo Koon for his steadiness. Shaak Ti for her knowledge of the facilities. And Anakin because when doors refused to open, he had a way of opening them anyway. They arrived in the storm-swept city of Tipoca, where the sea crashed endlessly against the stilts of the clone capital. The archive towers glowed with vertical lines of light as Shaak Ti pulled records, fast as her hands could move. Batch histories, chip schematics, medical updates, all of it flowed into Jedi datapads. But the moment they pulled too much, alarms shrieked through the hall. Red symbols spilled across the screens. Separatist malware surged through the archive like fire in dry brush. Entire libraries of evidence disintegrated into static before their eyes. "Cut the uplinks," Plo Koon ordered. They severed connections, but it was too late. Most of the records were gone. "What did we save?" Anakin asked. "Fragments," Shaak Ti admitted. "Enough to prove the chips exist, not enough to expose the Chancellor outright." "Then we get a chip itself," Plo said firmly. "A living soldier cannot be erased from the record." But where to find one? Every active trooper's medical file was tied to Republic surveillance, which meant tied to Palpatine. Removing a chip from an ordinary soldier would trigger alarms they couldn't silence. So they went to someone already marked as disposable, Slick, the clone commander who had once betrayed the Republic on Christophsis. He was rotting in a Kaminoan cell when Anakin stormed in. "You owe your brothers," Anakin said, dragging him to his feet. Slick sneered. "Funny. The Jedi care now, when they need something." Shaak Ti placed a hand on his shoulder. "Help us, and you help every clone who was born in this city. Help Fives." Slick went quiet. Finally he nodded. "Do it. Pull the thing out of my head. Show the galaxy what they made us into." In a sterile chamber filled with the hiss of machines, Shaak Ti guided a surgical probe through bone and brain. At last she lifted a slick gray shard from Slick's skull, a living, pulsing chip. Physical evidence that no Senate committee could ignore. But Palpatine already felt the disturbance. On Coruscant, new policies hit overnight. Data integrity protocols moved control of Republic archives under the Chancellor's office. Witnesses connected to the Fives incident vanished quietly. Senators who raised questions found their schedules filled with urgent security matters that kept them from hearings. And in the council chambers, pressure mounted. "He's closing the walls around us," Anakin growled. "What are we waiting for?" Obi-Wan answered softly. "The right moment. If we act now, we will look like conspirators. If we act when the proof is undeniable, he will be the traitor." Anakin didn't wait. He slipped into a restricted data center across from the Senate building, slicing into consoles with his lightsaber humming beside him. At first, the servers yielded nothing but ordinary traffic, and then a voice cut through the speakers. "You didn't say the magic word." The alarms blared. Red lights washed the room. Clone troopers stormed in, weapons raised. Anakin fought his way through a maze of blaster fire until Plo and Shaak Ti dragged him through a maintenance shaft. "That was a trap," Plo said firmly. "It was a chance," Anakin snapped back, "and it's slipping away every second we don't take it." In the shadows of the city, a droid shuffled forward with a holoprojector. Count Dooku's image flickered to life. "You see the truth now," he said calmly, "but you cannot act on it, not without help. Palpatine engineered this war, he authorized the chips. He will never give up his power willingly." "Why help us?" Anakin demanded. "Because I work with him," Dooku said. "Not for him, and when he falls I intend to live." The Jedi should have walked away, but instead they listened. The Jedi Council had no illusions now. The Chancellor of the Republic was the Sith Lord they had been searching for, the one orchestrating both sides of the Clone Wars. They had proof in their hands. The inhibitor chip extracted from Slick, the Kaminoan files, even Dooku's admission. But they also had a race against time. Because Palpatine would not wait, he would make his move soon. It happened in the middle of the night. Across the galaxy, clone commanders received a transmission directly from the Chancellor's office. The code was simple, buried deep in their neural programming: Execute Order 66. But for most of the army, the Whisper Protocol had already done its work. Chips that once would have stripped them of free will were little more than dead implants now, and the clones, for the first time in their lives, were free to decide for themselves. On Maikito, snow fell as Ki-Adi-Mundi led his troops through shattered streets. Commander Bakara felt the order sear into his head like a brand. For a heartbeat, his hand hovered near his blaster, but then he remembered the hours Mundi had spent beside wounded clones, refusing to leave until they woke. He remembered the charge Mundi had led that saved half a company from annihilation. Bakara's voice cut through the comlink. "Hold fire." The men lowered their rifles. Mundi turned in surprise. And for the first time, a Jedi and his clones stood together against the Chancellor's will. On Felucia, Commander Bly marched at Aayla Secura's side through tangled jungle. The order crackled in his skull, and he nearly faltered. But when he looked at her, he didn't see a traitor. He saw the general who had defended them, trained them, laughed with them. A trooper raised his rifle, trembling, and Bly's hand shot out. That's an order. Lower it. Around them, clones closed ranks, not against Aayla, but around her, forming a circle of protection. She didn't ignite her lightsaber. She didn't need to. The men had chosen. On Cato Nemoidea, the skies swirled with smoke as Plo Koon's fighter dove between bridges. His clone wingmates received the order, saw his silhouette in their scopes, but Captain Jag hesitated, hands frozen on the triggers. He remembered how Plo had pulled men from burning wreckage, how he knew their names. Commander Wolfie's voice crackled over the comm. "We're not doing it, not today." They hailed their general and warned him of the plot instead. On Kashyyyk, Master Yoda stood in the forest as Commander Grease stiffened beside him. The order sang in his head, demanding action. His troopers started to raise a weapon, but Grease stopped him with a sharp motion. Yoda turned, already knowing. He met Grease's eyes, and there was no need for words. "Report me dead," Yoda instructed softly. "Send the word to as many commanders as you can. Let him think he has won." And on Utapau, as Obi-Wan rode his Varactyl through narrow cliffs, Commander Cody received the signal. For an instant, the weight of programming pressed on him, but he shook his head and keyed his comm. "General Kenobi, return to base immediately. We need to talk." But the most dangerous moment came on Coruscant. At the Jedi Temple, Anakin Skywalker led the 5-0 first up the marble steps. Gunships filled the sky, blue-marked troopers marching behind him. Inside the temple were younglings, knights, and masters, Palpatine's targets. Anakin's face was hard, his hand resting near his saber. The clones followed, weapons ready, but halfway up the stairs something changed. Commander Appo halted, so did the front line of troopers. One by one, rifles lifted, not toward the temple, but toward Anakin himself. Skywalker froze, eyes flicking from the barrels to the temple doors. His chest heaved as anger boiled inside him. He could feel the Jedi beyond those doors. He could see the path Palpatine promised. Slaughter, power, the chance to save Padme. All of it within reach, if he just gave the order. Appo's visor locked onto him. "General, what is going on here?" His voice cracked, almost pleading. Anakin's hand trembled at his side. He muttered, "The Jedi have betrayed us. They tried to kill the Chancellor." But the men didn't move. Memories pressed into their minds. Anakin fighting beside them. Ahsoka kneeling to comfort the wounded. Jedi generals throwing themselves into fire to protect their soldiers. They remembered laughter, courage, sacrifice. And then they imagined storming into the temple to gun down children. The thought curdled their stomachs. Appo's grip tightened on his rifle. "This isn't you. Snap out of it." Another clone shouted, "You're not the man we followed into battle." Anakin's fists clenched. He could hear Palpatine's voice whispering promises in his head. He could see Padme's face, fading like smoke. He looked at the temple, then at the men surrounding him. The storm inside him broke. With a sharp breath, he pulled his lightsaber from his belt and dropped it. The hilt clattered against the steps. He raised his eyes to the stars as if searching for an answer, but there was none. The clones moved as one. Stun bolts crackled, slamming into him. His body convulsed, collapsed, and crumpled beside the weapon that had once defined his life. Commander Appo lifted a hand, signaling across the city. The 5-0 first stood down. The gunships hovering above the temple engines powered low. The Jedi inside were safe. Inside his office, Palpatine watched reports stream across his console. Across the galaxy, clone commanders were signaling Jedi terminated. He smiled until he stretched out with the Force. The darkness should have been overwhelming, a tidal wave of death. Instead, it was a trickle, too few. Something was wrong. He looked out his window toward the Jedi Temple. The Force was steady there, not collapsing as it should have. Fear prickled the back of his neck. He slammed his hand on the comm, patching through to Kamino. No answer. He tried again. Still silence. For the first time in years, Sidious felt something he despised. Doubt. And then the skies of Coruscant lit up. Venator-class Star Destroyers emerged from hyperspace above the city world, their hulls bristling with gunships. Jedi generals stood on the decks. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, Ki-Adi Mundi returned from the front in time to strike. "Deploy," Yoda ordered. LAAT gunships poured from the carriers, swarming like insects toward the Senate district. The plan was clear: surround the executive building. Sidious could not be allowed to flee. Obi-Wan rode beside Cody, Yoda beside Gree, Plo with Wolf, and Mundi with Bakara. The men who hours earlier had been ordered to kill them now flew in tight formation, brothers in arms once again. As the gunships descended, civilians scattered. The Chancellor's tower loomed ahead, its spire reaching into the sky, and at its window, a figure appeared. Lightning ripped from Palpatine's hands, lashing into the sky. One gunship exploded instantly, spinning into fire. Ki-Adi-Mundi and his men were gone in a flash. The rest veered off, dodging arcs of blue energy that lit the night like a storm. Gunships spiraled, debris raining onto the city below. But from within the formation, three shapes leapt free. Yoda, Plo, and Obi-Wan ignited their blades mid-air, spinning through lightning and flame toward the shattered window. Palpatine's eyes flared gold as he braced for their arrival. The duel for the Republic had begun. What if the Kaminoans revealed Order 66? Maybe the Jedi wouldn't return with glory or titles. Maybe peace wouldn't come through thrones or grand victories. Maybe it would come quietly, through reform, through choice, through survival. Because stopping the Sith wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something harder. And the clones? They weren't just soldiers. They were men the galaxy finally had to see for what they truly were: free. If you enjoyed this alternative timeline, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Star Wars stories. And may the Force be with you.